Now, you just heard from the senior senator from Ohio there, Bernie Moreno. The junior senator is Senator John Husted, who joins us on AM 1420. The Answer. Senator, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to be with you.
Good to have you, too.
Bernie Moreno's right, by the way. Bernie's right. We shouldn't get paid if we're not running the government. We should. Every member of Congress should lose their pay for every day the government's shut down.
Is there going to be a bill sponsored for that, or is this just going to be a hey, everybody?
Rick, I know Bernie has one. Rick Scott has one. I already co-sponsored the one with Rick Scott, and we need. This is ridiculous. I mean, and if they're not going to do their job, they shouldn't get pay. And I'm willing to apply those rules to myself. Let's see if we can get 60 votes for that. They won't vote to keep the government open. Maybe we'll get. What do you think the chances we'll get 60 votes to cut our pay?
Well, not at all. Those chances are slim and none, and slim is gone. And again, this is House side, but Hakeem Jeffries was asked that question at a press conference yesterday, and he said, well, that's not the right question to ask because we don't think this is going to be a very long shutdown anyway. Instead of just saying, yes, we should forego our pay, because we are responsible for this. And quite literally, Senator Husted, as a member of Democrat leadership, is responsible for this.
He's completely responsible. He's a co-conspirator with Chuck Schumer for the Schumer shutdown. And this is not just about now. It's about going forward. Like, stop this nonsense. And by the way, this is about nothing. We've offered them a clean CR. No politics, no nothing. Just keep the government open for another 7 weeks, providing pay for our members of military and our law enforcement agencies, and making sure people are getting their permits and licenses, who are particularly small businesses that need them. Just keep it open. We'll keep talking about anything you want. That's what government does. But don't shut the government down and try to hold the American people hostage to get your own way. And one of the things they're trying to get their own way on is continuing to provide health care for illegal immigrants. And that's just wrong. Chuck Schumer keeps saying, well, Republicans are lying about that. We're not lying. Like, you look at the Democrat debate, they all raised their hands. I just posted this on my social media. Who wants to cover undocumented immigrants? The question was, they all raised their hands. It's in their bill. And if you're talking about making American health care affordable, we'll stop using American tax dollars to pay for health care for people who are here illegally.
That is exactly correct, and they are lying about it while accusing you of doing the same. We're talking to Senator John Husted. I saw this post by Senator Moreno, and I think Caroline Levitt and a bunch of others have shared this as well. This is the Democrat CR spends nearly $200 billion on health care subsidies for illegal immigrants and other non-citizens, and it has a breakdown of the sections, WFTCA sections. And you add them up, there's $28 billion, $34 billion, $94 billion, up to $192 billion in subsidies for illegal aliens. Senator, I don't understand how anybody, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, could possibly support the government going into our pockets and taking money out of our pockets and giving it to the illegal alien down the block so that he can have something that we're paying for. Make that make sense. I can't.
I can't. This is what the last election was about. This is what the American people wanted from Donald Trump and the Republicans they elected to Congress, is to stop this. And we stopped it in the budget reconciliation bill. And now the Democrats want to go back and open the door up. And you want to know why? Because they have a bunch of sanctuary cities. They have a bunch of blue states that are harboring, millions of people who are here illegally, and it's expensive because when they go to the hospital, that costs their hospitals money, and now they want to get reimbursed for all of the care that they're providing for people who are here illegally, and they're feeling the consequences of this now, and that's why they want to reopen the door and help get all their hospitals paid for providing care for people who are here illegally.
Yeah, no, that is exactly correct. And Senator, I read an article, I think it was a Breitbart article, specifying the reason why the Democrats are seeking health care funds for illegal aliens is to stop them from self-deporting, because they are self-deporting at extraordinary numbers, far more than ICE is able to actually round up. But they're self-deporting. They're taking advantage of the offer, through the CBP Home app, to go back to their own countries and go back with a few dollars and so forth. Democrats are afraid that more of them, which they are counting on for what's apportionment, congressional apportionment. They are counting on them staying in these states so that they can expand their number of representatives in the blue states, and thus, try to shrink the Republican majority or build one of their own.
Spot on. All of those things are factors in the deranged logic that they have about why this is all a good idea. And, they want to talk healthcare. I'm happy to talk healthcare with them. Let's talk about this because, what we did is implement the mandate that the American voters sent last November. Was there anything that was more clear of a message that the American voters sent than they wanted the borders closed and they wanted people who were here illegally deported and they wanted their tax dollars to stop going to people who are here illegally? Is there anything that was decided last November that was more clear than that point? And that's what we're doing, and that's what they want to stop.
It is 100% the case. You're exactly right. If you were to, list, I think we all knew it. We talked about it during the run-up to that election. The two biggest things were illegal immigration and inflation. Those were the two biggest things that people were worried about. They needed their prices to go down from Biden inflation, and they needed the borders to be secured. And the two words that I think you said that are the most important, Senator Husted, a few moments ago were reconciliation bill. We just had this fight. In the summer in which the one big beautiful bill was passed, and all of this was debated, and all of these cuts were made, and the vote happened, and the president signed it, which is exactly what the people voted for last November. And now somehow Democrats think that the people changed their minds, that we should ignore everything we just did in the one big beautiful bill and just restore this funding for PBS and NPR and USAID and health care for illegals and all of those cuts. Just reverse those. What, they think the people didn't really didn't really mean what they did in November?
Yeah, it's astonishing because look, you go back to we get our orders from the people. They send messages during the election. And the issues that I heard loud and clear, that they didn't like Biden inflation, and they wanted us to do things like make gas cheaper, which we have, keep fighting on all of these inflationary issues, like health care, which we are. They didn't want boys, men playing women's sports. We tried to defeat that. Every single Democrat voted against us, didn't vote with us on that one to try to stop men from playing women's sports. President Trump's put an executive order in place, but the other one was secure the borders, deport criminal illegals, and stop using money from the federal budget, taxpayer money, to fund services for illegal immigrants. Those were clear messages, and we've done those things. We fought for those. That was signed on July 4 in the reconciliation bill. That was the biggest tax cut for working families in American history. We did all that, and now the Democrats want to shut down the government so that they can try to reclaim the ability to fund health care for illegal immigrants and do some of these other things, and that is not going to fly.
This is one of those few situations, Senator Husted, where the Democrats aren't going to be given the automatic victory in the blame game by way of the media. I was listening, and in fact, I played 3 different clips of CNN anchors and reporters asking some of the Democrat members of Congress questions, and senators like Chris Coons, and they're very critical. They're basically saying, you guys are the ones doing this because this is a clean CR the Republicans have put forward, and you're not approving that, even though you have said many times in the past that that's what you would want. Normally, when shutdown threats happen, they count on the water carriers in the media to blame the Republicans for it. That's not even happening this time. So put on your Karnak. You and I are both old enough to remember Karnak the Magnificent. Put on your Karnak hat there and tell me, how long do you think they're going to hold out on this, Senator, knowing they don't have the benefit of the media this time?
Well, I tell you, I'll give you my scenario of how I think it will end. I don't think this is going to go on much longer because they're losing. They've already lost 3 Democrats who've come over to our side. We only need 5 more to come over and vote with us. I think that as they start to see this pressure starts to build from people who are affected by the shutdown, people who don't get paid, services that get closed. this is what you'll hear from Chuck Schumer. He's going to say, well, we've made our case to the American people. The American people are with us. Donald Trump is doing great harm to the government and the American people by all of the budget cuts he's making in the absence and during the shutdown. And then he'll say, and we're going to vote for this to do the right thing to keep government open, and we'll give them 7 more weeks to capitulate to our demands, and then we'll have this fight 7 weeks from now. But we're not going to relent on these fundamental issues.
That's a pretty good guess, I think, as far as how this plays out. And in fact, it leads me to one more question for you here, Senator John Husted. Wouldn't it be okay for there to be at least a few more days of shutdown, because the president can do what we also wanted him to do, which is trim the size of this over-bloated government? That's what DOGE was in the first 6 months of the year or so, identifying places where we are just fat. We've got how many government employees who were hired by Biden during his 4 years just to prop up his employment numbers? There's all these people with make-work jobs who are not important, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be pejorative or mean or cruel to anybody who's got one of those jobs, but if you've got a job that is just non-essential and it was just created to help the employment numbers under Biden, I wouldn't mind letting Russ Vogt go to work here and trimming the government by some pretty big numbers before it gets back open again.
Yeah, my only thing is that also in leaving a shutdown, men and women in the military don't get paid. People who are providing us services and making sacrifices aren't getting paid, and that's not right by them. And so I think we can do both. I think that we can cut the things that Russ Vogt is putting there, and he can do that right now. And I think that the president will be very busy over the next 24 hours taking care of all those things that they want to take care of. But I hope when we return on Friday to vote, I hope that the Democrats will come to their senses. And but if they don't, I hope that the president and Russ Vogt will sharpen their pencils and get rid of everything that we don't need to have in federal government.
Yeah, well, they should. Their pencils and their swords, because I got to do some strategic cutting with respect to to the size of this government, which is one of the you mentioned it. What the American people probably more than anything else wanted back in November was the closing of the borders, and that has been successful. 95% fewer crossings than we had before. But one of the other things was indeed shrink the government. We are way too fat, and the national debt is way too high, obviously, and the more we spend, the deeper it gets. And so, that's one thing that all of these cuts that were in the big, beautiful bill did do, was what the American people asked it to do, and that is, is to work on trimming the government down. I know that the bill on its face adds to the debt over the course of 10 years, but it sets the conditions for that to be dramatically reduced in terms of spending going forward, does it not?
Well, in the one big, beautiful bill, that actually cut the deficit. You look at it, it cuts the deficit, not by nearly enough, but it cuts the deficit. And by the way, what we're talking about now,
which was around $2 trillion, wasn't it? When the deficit around $2 trillion, it had to be cut.
It did, and then also the deficit's also being cut from the revenues from tariffs. There are going to be $200-300 billion that are coming in from revenue from tariffs, and that's also going to work against cutting the deficit. And that wasn't included in any of those numbers that were being discussed. So those are facts out there. But what we're talking about now about keeping the government open, this is about just a narrow part of government spending. It's about 25 to 30% of government spending. So it doesn't touch things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid in terms of the overall spending numbers. Just how the program's administered under Medicaid is something that Democrats want to go back and mess in and take out those cuts, or take out the savings that we got from eliminating illegals from having the opportunity to get health care paid for by the American taxpayer. So a lot of those things are happening in this whole conversation.
Yeah, well, you're so right about needing to reduce the deficit, and indeed, the One Big Beautiful Bill does that. And to bring it home for the Democrats, what they are proposing in terms of their CR version of this is $1.5 trillion in new debt. $1.5 trillion of new spending and new debt, as opposed to a clean CR keeping the government funded at its current levels. That shouldn't be very difficult for any American to understand.
Yeah, we have no spending increase in this. It just funds it at the same level that they've all voted for in the past. And but in the end, you know what's different? Donald Trump's president, Joe Biden's not. And they have Trump derangement syndrome, and they want to do anything that they can to undermine President Trump in office. But this is backfiring on them. They're holding the American people hostage, but Chuck Schumer is holding his party hostage, because I know so many Democrats have been on the record warning about how government shutdowns are not good, and and now Chuck Schumer's saying, no, you got to vote to shut the government down. They look like fools, and eventually they will cave, and we'll get back to work. But it's just unfortunate that we have to go through all of this to get that done.
Senator, great analysis on all of that. Last question I'll ask of you is, of your opponent. You're in a race now. Obviously, Sherrod Brown wants to come back to Washington. He's challenging you. I haven't heard anything from Sherrod Brown about this shutdown. What are you hearing anything? Is your campaign monitoring what's going on over there?
I have not heard anything other than I just know he was recruited by Chuck Schumer to run again, and that when he was in the U.S. Senate, he voted to do all of those things that allow for illegal immigrants, to get free health care paid for by the American taxpayer. And so the fact that he isn't out there right now talking a lot about this, that's probably why.
There is a statement on the NRSC website, the National Republican Senatorial Committee website, that said Sherrod Brown would be a vote for Schumer's shutdown. Specifically, the Democrats demand on $1.5 trillion in new spending, funding free health care for illegals, all the stuff you and I talked about here. Quote, there's no doubt Sherrod Brown would sell out to the far left and join his former Senate Democrat colleagues to shut down the federal government just so they can demand taxpayer-funded benefits for illegals, said Nick Puglia from the NRSC. And I think that's important to note. I want everybody to know that, everybody listening in Ohio to know that this is exactly what we would be in store for if this guy somehow got back to Washington and had one of those all-important votes in the Senate. It's why people need to rally behind your campaign and make sure that you get a full term after this.
Well, I would greatly appreciate the support of your listeners, and we will go continue to fight the good fight. And, I think one thing that you probably got from my conversation is I listened to what the message the voter sent last November to all of us, and we are working very hard to deliver on the job that they sent us to do.
I have no doubt that you will have the support of the listeners of this show, and we will continue to support your efforts as well. Senator, thank you for coming on and making clear your position on all of these things regarding this shutdown and spending. We appreciate that very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.